Caleb is opted out. Our star running back is going to pass on the game. We've discussed that already. No reason to discuss anymore. We do wish Caleb nothing but the best. He's given us a great year. 1,537 yards on 240 carries. Jamari Harris is also opted out. He, without a doubt, is our best cover corner. So now, maybe they'll be a little bit conflicted about which corner to go after. It was always easy to know to throw away from Jamari. And now Deshaun and TJ, I believe, will be starting. Missouri, at the same time that we've lost a couple of outstanding players, they've also lost a couple. Luther Burden is projected by almost everyone to be a first-round pick. Here's the scary thing about him, Corey, about the receiving corps. He had 61 receptions for 676 yards. He was first-team All-SEC. And amazingly enough, he wasn't even their leading receiver. Another guy that is playing against us is the leading receiver. And his name is Theo Weiss. Theo had 55 catches for 809 yards, more yardage than Burden. Now, my guess is he had more single coverage than Burden did. People were concentrating on Burden to the extent that Theo actually passed him up in terms of receiving yardage. So he's still an outstanding receiver, but at least they don't have two of them. They have only one. And then beyond that, in the offensive line, their best blocker, their right tackle, who was second team all conference, his name is Armand Mimbo, and he is opted out also. So we each have two quality starters, two of our very best players on both teams that are missing the game. Beyond that, I have uncovered here lately, Brett Norfleet is a tight end for them. I believe, as I recall, he was the fourth leading receiver. He is going to miss the game because of a shoulder injury. For the year, he played in 11 games, 26 catches for 235 yards. So I think that's a fairly significant loss at tight end. And then beyond that, our starting center had a season-ending knee injury against Oklahoma. The backup center has played over the last fourth of the season. And obviously he's not projected to play as well as the starter. The starter was named Connor Tollison. And here's one that's a little bit of a head scratcher. A linebacker, starting linebacker and team captain, Chuck Hicks, has opted out of the game. And the part that's a little confusing, he didn't say because I'm getting ready for the draft. Over 12 games, he only had 34 total tackles. That's an unusually low number of tackles. And his reason for opting out was officially listed as be able to spend more time with his family. That's a little odd. I don't know what that means.
Well,
never heard that one. But, in any case, maybe he's simply been beaten out, but he was a team captain, so he was certainly in a leadership position. Incidentally, the projected starter at right tackle was the number 2 left tackle, who was clearly beaten out by number 1. So what it amounts to, they've lost their very best tackle, and the tackles we're going to see in the starting lineup are the second and third best tackles. And in theory, the third best tackle off that original preseason look would be the starter on the right side. Their best offensive tackle, in theory, is the one on the left side who beat out the guy that's now starting on the right side. The right side starter, incidentally, is Javen Richardson. So the bottom line, Corey, I think it's safe to say they have a few more losses than we do from the regular season. And maybe that's a good sign for us. One comment I have made, which I do believe, one thing that's hard to measure, can we measure motivation for a bowl game? I think that's very difficult to do. That's one reason you see some crazy scores in bowl games sometimes. One team seems to be locked in, ready to play. The other team, not nearly so much. I feel confident in saying this. I think our motivation from a team-wide standpoint is going to be hard to top, simply because we've got a lot of great seniors that are playing their last game for the University of Iowa. I think that means the world to our players. I'd like to believe it's going to make a difference in the game itself.
And Don, anything stood out specifically? I know you've ran the analytics on this game, and these are two programs. I know when I looked at Missouri and their resume, I look at a team who has sort of struggled away from home. Now, I don't want to say that that's going to translate to a trip to Nashville. It's not a true road game, of course, but they got throttled at A&M earlier this season. They also got throttled at Alabama. Now, don't get me wrong. Those are two really strong programs. Nobody's debating that. That South Carolina game was a little closer. But the other ones were
one-sided.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Well, let's get into the analytics. And, I'm not going to give away the story. We know that. But I will tell you what the numbers all showed. Kind of interesting. Here's what I did. As you know, a bowl analysis now is a lot different than regular season stuff. I don't care really how all the other SEC games have gone this year. I'm just zeroing in on Missouri and, of course, zeroing in on Iowa. So I took 10 games of each. Kind of obvious which games I would pick. For Iowa, 9 conference games plus Iowa State. And in Missouri's case, they only play 8 conference games. That's a dirty little secret. They only play 8. And then I took the 2 best non-conference opponents that I, in my estimation, were. And I took 10 games on the part of each team. And, the exercise, evaluate them based on 25 different parameters. And then my goal, which is kind of unrealistic, but what I hope for, ideally I would find one parameter that I could identify the winning team 20 for 20. That did not happen. And the next step then would be maybe just zero in on each team separately. Are there any parameters that were 100% win? If you won the parameter, you won the game. Any that would be consistent 100% with Iowa? And then looking at Missouri separately, are there any parameters that were 100% win in the case of Missouri? The answer is yes. Each of us had one parameter that was 100% win. I'm not going to tell you what they are, but I don't mind telling you this. In Iowa's case, that parameter was not 10 for 10. It was a parameter that had a couple of ties. But in the other 8 games, the team that won the parameter won all 8 of those games. 100% win based on 8 decided edges on the part of one team or the other. As you know, in those 10 games, our record was 6-4. 6 wins, 4 losses in those 10 games. Now addressing Missouri, they won 7 out of those 10 games. Same question. Is there one parameter that's 100% win? The answer is yes, there's only one. And that parameter, incidentally, did go 10 for 10. 100% win in all 10 games. In other words, if Missouri won the game, they won the parameter. If those other 3 opponents that beat them won the parameter, they, in fact, also won the game. So it would go without saying, Corey, if either team wins those 2 parameters, I would all but guarantee you that's the winning team. I know it's kind of a bold statement, but I believe it'll hold up. Now, here's the truth. One of those parameters is if you just want to play numbers, one of those parameters is likely to be won by us. And when you know it, the other parameter is very likely to be won by them. So we're probably going to split those 2. And at that point, you're looking at another 1-score game. That's probably what it's going to be.
So I'm guessing one of those parameters is edge on rushing yards. And the other parameter is edge in passing yards.
And you might be wrong in both cases.
Well, that's the most obvious. First of all, turnovers are hard to predict. I don't think you'd be so bold with average starting field position. And for the record, folks, Coach Patterson and I have not talked about this in advance, so I really am just guessing on those. But that would be my educated guess, Don. So you don't have to tell me if I'm right or wrong. I know you won't. I
will share these parameters with you. So I've already said 2 parameters, 1 of each, 1 for us, 1 for them, have been 100% win over 10 games. Here's another way to look at it, though. Let's go back and let's look at each of our 6 wins. Are there any parameters that we won in each of those 6 games? You'll find this interesting. There are 4 that we won in each of those 6 wins. This will make sense to you when you think about it. Those 4 parameters, I don't mind telling you. We won on average starting field position. We won on turnover margin. We won on super explosive plays. And we also won on fewer penalties. If you think about it, Corey, that's precisely how we win football games. We win on field position, win on turnovers. We eliminate home run plays. And we also have fewer penalties. That's our formula for success. It would only make sense that if we won those 4, we might win each of those 6 games. And it'd be nice if we could duplicate that effort against Missouri, because I think that would very likely produce another win. Here's another way to look at it. Are there any parameters that Missouri won in each of their 7 wins? There's only one. And of course, it's that same parameter that was 10 for 10. And of course, I'm not going to tell you what it is. Incidentally, just talking about.
You're not, Don? You're not going to tell me what it is? All right.
I'll tell you after the game. I'll be happy. That brings up a good point. Post game, maybe you haven't thought about it yet. I'm assuming you'd like to go right after the game. And I'm assuming also that's what our listeners would like for us to do.
Don, we haven't talked. Are you going to be at the game?
No. And a lot of people have asked me, and I've simply said, if I knew that it was Kirk's last game, I'd be there. And I'm going to take him at his word. I don't think he's done coaching for Iowa. Consequently, we're not going to go to Nashville. And the beauty of that is I'll be taking notes during the game, and I'll be ready to go on the air as soon as you want to.